Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Republican Media Availability, and thank you for joining us. With us today on the House side are House Republican Leader J.T. Wilcox from the 2nd District and Representative Andrew Barkis, Ranking Member on the House Transportation Committee, also from the 2nd District. And from the Senate, we have Senate Republican Leader John Braun from the 20th District and Senator Curtis King, Ranking Member on the Senate Transportation Committee and the Senate Labor and Commerce Committee, and from the 14th District. A quick note before we get started, Senator Braun will need to leave right at 9:30 a.m. This morning, and we understand that the House and Senate Democrats have their media availability at 9:30 a.m., so we'll try to be done just before then. With that, I will turn it over to House Republican Leader J.T. Wilcox for some brief opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I hope that you saw the highlights of our budget debate last night. I think it ended somewhere around 10 o'clock. I'll be very brief because of the time constraints that we have. To me, there's several highlights. First of all, a very bipartisan budget over the Senate, a less bipartisan budget in the House. Next, the failure, I think, of House and Senate Democrats to be willing to address the mistakes of the past when it comes to public safety. And next, surprising and very disappointing, I think, battle of ideologies that is somewhat opaque because it's inside Democratic caucuses when it comes to housing, which is one of the several reasons that I asked Andrew Barkis to join us. And I'll hand it over to the Senate and John Braun now.
Thanks, JT. I'll be brief also. I would highlight just a couple things. You know, when it comes to public safety, we got two big bills we're working hard to get out. And I think however this lands, I'd like to give my colleagues in both Senate caucus and the House caucus credit for working in a very bipartisan, cooperative manner. We've done our best from the minority to offer solutions to these very hard problems having to do with vehicular pursuit and the Blake decision to get us to an answer that helps the state of Washington, even if it's not exactly the right answer, the answer we would pick by ourselves. And if it doesn't make it, I don't think it can be said that we didn't give it our best shot from the minority. On affordability, I think you're down to just a few things left. We got some big housing issues that are coming together now. Taxes are now creeping up as we approach the end of session. We've seen that the REIT is still in discussion, and it shouldn't be. We've also seen an introduction of a new income tax just over the weekend after the recent ruling by the state Supreme Court. And finally, on education, the big issue is our budget. Are we going to stick with the plan to fund a meaningful, effort on making up our learning loss? And are we going to really get after properly funding our special education students? So these are the big issues as we close it out in the last 3 weeks. I'll stop right there and turn it back over to John Handy.
All right, with that, we will get to questions. First, we will go to Jerry Cornfield of the Everett Herald.
Good morning. Thank you. First topic I wanted to touch on. Today, you may be aware there are two press conferences going on later this morning, early afternoon, dealing with the issue of abortion and legislation. One is a new bill relating, as we understand, to protecting access to medical medication, abortion medication, and another dealing with data. Wondering what is your interpretation of the Democrats raising these issues at this stage, and what, if any, concerns are you hearing from constituents that want the issue to be resolved and dealt with this session?
I think this is, I didn't know about the two press conferences, so you got me on that one, Jerry. But what I would say is this has been an effort throughout the session to make this the key issue for the session, and frankly, it's fell flat. You know, the law in the state of Washington has been in place since 1970. It was put in place by the people of the state of Washington. Nothing is changing that. No one is suggesting we change it. We do not have an issue with access. We do not have, we don't have an issue with the current law. It is what it is. And what we hear from our constituents, at least what I hear from folks from around my district and from around the state, is they want us to deal with public safety. They want us to deal with affordability here in the state of Washington. They want us to deal with education. And they're not really worried about the abortion issue. They know they have spoken, and the law is the law.
Yeah, I would say nobody is threatening the status of that issue in the state of Washington. Republicans are not bringing it up. Democrats are. People are very concerned about lots of other threats, including public safety and even the lack of access to other kinds of public health in the state of Washington.
Jerry, did you have a follow-up?
Just because I see Representative Barkas and housing, I couldn't keep track of what the Senate Ways and Means did in the end with their strikers and changes, but it does feel like the middle housing bill, House Bill 1110, isn't in the same shape it was when it was introduced. And I wondered, can it produce any more housing? What's your critique of where it's at right now?
Thanks, Jerry, and good morning. Good observation, Jerry. No, that bill is nowhere near what it was when it started. It is a product of time and pressure, right? And as we see with so many policies, but this one especially, all the housing policies. As it left committee, I know that there was a striker placed upon it. And a lot of what's in there is addressing the myriad of cities, primarily in the Puget Sound region, primarily on the east side of Seattle, who all wanted to have their say in exactly what could be done within that bill. It still has a good basis, and I do believe that it will produce housing. If implemented and if it stays the way it is now, and that's there's no guarantee on that either. But as it plays in with the other housing policies we'll talk about as maybe we go along, all of these housing policies have altered tremendously from where they started in a strong position, in a very bipartisan position. And as we end up this session, I will be lucky if we see a few of them survive and have any meaning to get after our supply issue.
Hey, Jerry, I think what I would characterize it this way. We offered lots of opportunities to produce housing for the state of Washington via the private sector that wouldn't cost the taxpayer a dime. Most of those have been throttled back or killed. And what we see the governor and others pursuing is billions and billions of dollars of public housing when we could have produced them in the private sector at no cost to taxpayers.
It's a good way of putting it.
Senator Braun, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. So I would just add, I mean, I agree with Representative Barkas' evaluation of the middle housing bill. It's not what it was, but it is still meaningful. And I think the most important thing is it's still alive. It has moved out of Ways and Means. It's in rules. And I think we have the votes to ultimately get it off the floor of the Senate and get it into negotiations. And I think there's still opportunity there. I think that's still true for the ADU bill. It's still true for the transit bill, which is also taking quite a beating. It's still true. And I think maybe the bill that's in the best shape right now is the permitting bill. So there's still housing bills in play that can make a difference. They're not everything we all first imagined, but that's kind of how the legislative process goes. And I'm still optimistic.
Did you have anything else, Jerry?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Next, we will go to Laurel Demkovich of the Spokesman Review.
Thank you. Good morning. I guess just to follow up on that last question, maybe for Representative Barkas, I think you kind of hinted at this, but can you talk a little bit more about, I guess, how we got here with the middle housing bill? I mean, what some of the sticking points were. I know a number of folks in both of your caucuses were supportive of that. Democrats were obviously supportive of that. So how did we, I guess, get to where we're at with that?
Sure. And I would agree with Senator Braun. I mean, this was a tremendous amount of policy to tackle in one session, let alone in a year plus, and to try to get it where it's at. I think the biggest concern was there was still this push that said, if we allow middle housing throughout in its entirety, you're going to see neighborhoods alter. You're going to see single family homes replaced with duplexes, fourplexes, sixplexes. And I think that's one of the key reasons why one of the key bills, in my opinion, obviously, because I was the centerpiece, was the lot split bill, didn't move, was because of this overwhelming amount of potential units, which we want. We want an overwhelming amount of supply. So when we had those thresholds put on relating to population bases, especially in some of the larger counties, there was a contiguous, what they call a contiguous within the GMA, the UGA, this boundary line, and it would pick up some of these smaller communities. And those smaller communities did not want to fit within that. They felt that it should be underneath the aspect of the thresholds of 75,000 population or 25,000, which would limit what could be put on those lots. So ultimately, I believe the Stryker, as it put together, did address that. And so you see a not as much opportunity to put in, say, a fourplex or sixplex, but limiting what can be put on any given lot within the thresholds of the population. So it still will have an effect, and especially in some communities where they want that and or are already working towards that. And it does work in conjunction with the other ones. I think that one of the key pieces on this is did not pick up the affordability pieces like the transitory development bill that came out of the Senate 40-7, and by the time it got to the House, became an affordable housing bill, which pretty much eliminated the incentives for private sector to develop within those transitory districts. Now we're trying to work that backwards and align it with the middle housing bill, which hopefully we'll get there with that. But that's really the biggest thing. And I think those thresholds, when you looked at the original bills, it was very broad and the thresholds were high. The city limits were, the population were very low. And over time, those dials got dialed up to where it restricted, where this can actually be implemented.
Yeah, I would just add one thing. We notice the change in Ways and Means. What maybe not everybody added is we actually defeated, I think, 5 amendments that would have made the bill useless. So yeah. I think there's still effort on both sides to try to make this do something useful and build more housing. And it's going to be, the legislative process is sometimes messy, but we're going to get there.
Did you have a follow-up, Laurel?
Yeah, on another question on abortion, specifically the SHIELD law, I guess I'm wondering, I know you've mentioned, you feel that there's no point in, expanding access in Washington, as you said, it's law, but I mean, why not work to kind of protect people who might come from Idaho, for example, where they just, passed that trafficking bill. I don't know how much you know about that, but I guess specifically your thoughts on the SHIELD law proposal this session.
Laurel, candidly, I don't know a lot about the SHIELD law. This is fairly new. If you're talking about the announcement this afternoon, I'm just not that familiar with it. But I would say the same thing again. We're not getting a clamoring from our constituents that this is the most important issue. I'm not saying it's not an important issue and it doesn't deserve attention. It's just as you spend your time here in Olympia, we want to be as responsive as we can to what the people in our districts are asking for. And this isn't something that's the top of their mind, that they feel like they have the access that they have voted into law decades ago now, and that this isn't, it's just not their top issue. I'm not saying it's, like I said, it's not an important issue, it's just not their top issue.
Do you have anything else, Laurel?
No, I'm okay, thanks.
Okay. Next, we will go to Claire Withercombe of the Seattle Times.
Hi, good morning. I spoke with Senator Braun about this yesterday, but I'm interested in opening it up to the group. Bill dropped yesterday what's described as an excise tax on the compensation of highly paid hospital employees. I think the bill number is 5767. Just curious about kind of Republicans' views on this, kind of late in session. Is this a messaging bill? Is there a serious chance that this will get considered? Thank you.
Well, I think it's absolutely a messaging bill, and the message is if you're part of a group that some legislator doesn't like, the floodgates are wide open now for them to go after you by naming your organization, naming your group, and calling it an excise tax.
Senator Braun?
Ditto. I think JT nailed it. I mean,
did you have a follow-up, Claire?
I don't think so, but I imagine you are kind of talking about kind of the post Quinn capital gains tax context there.
Yes.
Thank you.
The next question comes from Brett Davis from the Center Square via email, and it's along similar lines as the last question. But he says, I see Senate Bill 5767 funding healthcare access by imposing an excise tax on the annual compensation paid to certain highly compensated hospital employees has been introduced following the state Supreme Court's decision that an excise tax could be applied to income. Given said decision, do you think this will be the first of many excise taxes on income introduced in Washington?
I'll expand a little bit on what I said, perhaps. You know, this is such a worrisome phenomenon now. It's not just about taxes. It's about the idea that, you know, you demonize a group and you use the legislature to go after them. And if anybody thinks that they won't be part of some unpopular group sometime, they should think again. The idea of using legislation to attack individual groups, small groups of people is just so corrosive. I hope that this is the last effort like this that we see, but we should all be concerned that it's the first.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot to add there. We saw efforts to, you know, bills even before the recent ruling by the state Supreme Court, but after the passage of the capital gains tax in 2021 to increase the rate, to you know, drop down the exemption, to broaden the tax, and we've been saying all along that if they get the ruling that they ultimately got, that this is going to be a gateway to additional taxes on a whole realm of organizations and people around our state. And I think this bill, while is probably a message, given that we have less than 3 weeks left in the session, is an indication of where people are going to go when they either are, as JT said, you know, have concerns about a particular organization, or they just need to find extra money to do something else with. I mean, it's just going to open up a whole new realm. I would be shocked if, when we come back into session next year, we don't have a myriad of different excise tax bills that go after different organizations and different groups of people, all for perhaps noteworthy causes, but not done in a way that is, I think, in keeping with our Constitution, or in a way that's fair and balanced and helps get after the, and you're going to sound repetitive here, but get after the key issues that we're focused on. And what people don't seem to always understand is when you raise taxes on one group of folks in our state, one of two things happen. Those folks either leave the state, in which case they don't pay the taxes, or they find a way to pass those costs on to others in the state and ultimately make the cost of living here in the state of Washington higher. That's how it plays out, and we've seen this, and yet the majority insists on dropping new and innovative new taxes, especially under the new ruling from the state Supreme Court. I use the term innovative very loosely there.
For the reporters still on, do you have any more questions? Okay. If not, in the time that we have left, let's turn it over to the ranking members of the House and Senate Transportation Committees, respectively, for them to weigh in on their thoughts on the transportation budget. And we will start with Representative Barkas. He can tell us a little bit about what happened on the House floor last night.
Thank you, John. Well, on the House floor, we passed the House transportation budget 96-1 with one excuse. So I don't think it gets more bipartisan than that. Very proud of the work that we did, and I think as Senator Braun and Representative Wilcox alluded to, not the same case with the operating budget. So it is absolutely reflective this year of being back in the room together after a couple of hard years. I think Senator King will agree in trying to work through the budget and the move ahead package. This bill, I'm confident, does a good job in correcting what we saw coming out of the governor's office at the beginning of the session, and that is very concerning move of critical infrastructure projects from the Connecting Washington package way out into the future, the rephasing, reappropriations, etc. We work diligently to work within the confines of the resources that we have to be able to bring those back forward, phase them in appropriately based on realistic expectations of when they could be completed. Using the reappropriations and existing bond capacity, we found the resources to do that. And that's reflected in the Gateway project, the North-South Freeway in Spokane, etc. In addition to that, we also funded our state patrol. Additional classes. We're still 254 troopers down. We have a huge issue there. And so the biggest thing is also looking at lateral classes, trying to attract other law enforcement professionals from around the country and the state to join the state patrol with using incentives and a different methodology by which to become a trooper. Maintenance and preservation, big investments there. The ferry boats, we did work a lot within the system to work on workforce development. On the capital side, of course, we still have an issue in getting these new ferries built. These delays have cost the state of Washington hundreds of millions of dollars. So we have been working in cooperation with the Senate on a procurement bill, which is going to open up the procurement process more widely and hopefully get some competitive bids quickly so we can get at building those. And I would say lastly, one of the key components in here, and I'm sure Senator King will expand on this, it was very difficult to see the amount of money that was lost, the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that we had to put into projects to cover the delays and the additional expenses that were incurred throughout the state for a myriad of reasons. But it was very concerning that we're not delivering these projects in a timely manner. That money that we had to reappropriate could have been used on a lot of other stuff that is much needed in the state. At the end of the day, I'm looking forward to, I think the Senate also has a very good budget. And we start, I think, this week, Senator, or soon, to reconcile those two into a product that we can be proud of here in the state of Washington. So, Senator King, you want to add on that?
Well, if I may, thank you, Andrew. And I do believe that the House has a good budget. I also believe that the Senate has a good budget, but that's what makes this always interesting. But yeah, the governor moved. Geez, I don't know what he did move out to 2031 or 2039 or whenever it was. But I mean, unbelievable that you could take the North-South Freeway as an example and say, oh, well, we're going to postpone that for 6 years. It had already been postponed for like 35. So, I mean, let's at some point, you got to get real and you got to work on getting things done. That's what I believe we tried to do in the Senate. I think the House did similar things. I think the main difference has to do with the length of, I think the House tried to balance with a 2-year outlook, and we tried to balance with a 6-year outlook. You know, those are the things that make I think our lives interesting and will bring us together as we try to negotiate these two budgets. As the good representative said, we got a real problem with our ferries, and for once we're trying to maybe look at, well, maybe we can buy one of these or 2 or 3 of these ferries outside of the state of Washington. believe me, that's getting all kinds of interesting comments, good, bad, and indifferent. But it's been something that we should have looked at a long time ago. Not necessarily saying that our ferry contractors can't be competitive, but we don't know because we've never had the opportunity to see what's out there and what another ferry from California or Louisiana or somewhere would cost us. So we got to work on ferries. We got to work on our ferry system. We're doing a lot trying to allow those in the ferry system to try and find employees that have been either retired or left because they weren't vaccinated or a variety of things. Caused us a real problem. I mean, we're missing sailings. We've cut our sailings back. I feel for all the people that have to ride the ferry system and may not have any other choices. We tried very hard to look at all of the ramifications within transportation, find some common ground, and we voted our budget, the Senate budget, out of labor and commerce, out of transportation. I believe yesterday had a good vote, 12 yeas and 2 without recommendation. We also passed a bond bill out and a tolling bill that had to do with allowing tolling on the new I-5 bridge that's being proposed. And it comes with a lot of ramifications and sideboards around it, which I think is a good thing. But I'm looking forward to sitting across the table from Chair Fye and Representative Barkas and trying to craft a transportation budget that's going to meet the needs of this state, at least for the next 2 years, and hopefully work on the next 4 to 6.
All right, with that, we will go to closing remarks, and we'll start with Senator Braun.
All right, thanks, John. I'll be brief. I appreciate everyone being here today. As I said earlier, we got under 3 weeks left. We're going to stay focused on the things that we think are people are telling us are the most important in their lives to make their families, their communities better, our state better, public safety, affordability, education. Have a good day. Bye.
Representative Wilcox.
Well, thanks again, everybody, for being here. We've got great House and Senate Republican teams that are working hard to make the last 3 weeks count. And in spite of the rough spots, we've got a bunch of people in the other caucuses that are here to serve the state of Washington as well. And I just want us to make the next 3 weeks as productive as possible.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again next week.